This is KSQD, Santa Cruz. K-Squid 90.7 FM and streaming at ksqd.org. Good morning and welcome to your Saturday morning garden show in the garden. I'm Stephen E. Popp and I'm here with the one and only
Joe Truskot. My great pleasure. We already warned you that we have views and opinions, and I'm telling you, we do have views and opinions, and we ain't keeping them to ourselves.
We won't.
Well, you know, there's one thing about a temperate climate. It means it's the same thing every year.
But we're a Mediterranean climate.
We're a temperate Mediterranean climate.
We are going through some changes. Hey, baby, we are going through some changes here.
But, you know, it really is, and we encourage you. We're here to motivate you, folks.
That's right.
In spite of the cold, gray weather that's drizzling, you need to be out there weeding.
Yeah. Well, I was out there planting trees this week, so I qualify as having been in the garden at home at least. Before we get too far along, I do want to mention that. I wanted to jump in with a couple of the questions, and I want to remind our listeners that you can text us. What's that number, Joe?
It's 831-900-5773. That's 900-5773. If you've got a question for Mr. Popp, you just send it along, and he'll get right to it. And we'd love to hear from you because we like to know what our listeners are thinking.
So we did get a couple of questions last week, and one of the questions was, when is it a good time to plant a Meyer lemon? Well, quite frankly, any time is a good time to plant a Meyer lemon, but how you plant it might make a difference. If you have a healthy plant in a pot, the first thing that you want to look for is, or to figure out, is what kind of a soil profile are you going to be planting it in if you're planting it in the ground. Citrus in general want to have good drainage. They resent having wet feet, and they can be susceptible to getting crown rot. So I conferred with our permaculture guest, Ken Foster, who was on last week, and he was talking about how if you are in heavier soil, the adobes, the clays, the not well-draining soil, to plant your citrus with the crown a little bit above the surface. Mound it up. Keep it high. It's all right if a little bit of the roots under the crown get exposed. Just make sure that you have good drainage or that it is not sitting with wet feet. If you want to do a real simple test to figure out what kind of percolation rate or how fast the water will move through your soil, dig yourself a hole 1 foot deep and about 6 to 8 inches across. Fill it up with water. And then after the water drains out, fill it up again. Then calculate how long it takes for the water to drain out the second time. If it's gone right away, you've got a pretty sandy, well-draining soil. If it's still holding water by the afternoon or the next day or next week, you're probably in some heavy clay, and you may need to amend or do something else to ensure that you get good drainage, particularly for your citrus.
Oh, yeah.
So, next question that we had last week was from Jasmine, and Jasmine wanted to know, is the rooibos plant something that will grow in Santa Cruz? Well, first of all, rooibos, which is Afrikaans for red bush, is the botanical is Asplanthus linearis, which is a plant in the broom family. It's in the Fabaceae or Leguminacea family, the pea family, legume family, and it looks very much like a broom, a Scotch broom or something, with needle-like leaves, yellow flowers. It's native to the eastern and western Cape areas of South Africa, which is also referred to as the Fynbos region, and that is an area that is a Mediterranean climate, very similar to what ours is supposed to be. So the answer would be yes, you can grow rooibos here in Santa Cruz or probably anywhere along the Central Coast. provided you can find a plant or seeds. Now, I did do a little search, and I did find them available for sale on various locations on Google. And the question, of course, is going to be if you get a plant or if you have the seeds, how well will it thrive initially? Apparently, it is a plant that, very similar to most legumes, it does fix nitrogen on its roots, little nitrogen nodules, but it does have a relationship with other mycorrhizae in the soil in its native habitat. Speaking of its native habitat, it's actually in South Africa. It's said that this plant is beginning to encroach upon other species because of the major production. And why do they produce it? They produce it for tea, and they make both a red and a green style of tea. The red variety is said to have a flavor of something a cross between yerba mate and tobacco. The green, would be more of a malty, almost grassy sort of a flavor. So I hope that
aren't they not caffeinated as well?
I don't believe there's any caffeine involved.
Yeah, because I think that's how they got so popular, because they tasted like a real strong tea.
Yeah,
and yet.
And it's supposed to have other
you didn't get a buzz and we're up all night.
And other health benefits as well, which I don't know what they are. But,
yeah.
So I hope that those two things answer the questions. Joe, is there anything else that you were thinking of?
No, I'm ready to hear from our guest.
All right, me too.
He's ready to talk. I can tell. He's just right on the edge of he's perched on the edge of his chair.
We all are. We all are. Hey, listen, we are very, very pleased to welcome to the studio Rick Becton. And Rick has lived here in California permanently since 1986. He says he's originally a Southerner. We'll find out where exactly in the South he hails from. But most notably, Rick spent 25 years as a historical guide with California State Parks, and 10 of those years he spent at Hearst Castle, which I think consecutively he was working to earn a bachelor degree in landscape architecture at Cal Poly. So you were a busy guy, and you still are. Rick, say good morning to our listeners.
Good morning, listeners, and good morning, Stephen and Joe. Yeah. Good to be here.
Well, we are happy to have you. So let's start out just by hearing you tell us a little bit about your past, how you got into plants, how you ended up in the state parks, etc.
All right. Well, I grew up in Georgia, and when I was 19, I decided to enter the Navy, and I was given a choice of 3 different recruit training centers to attend, one in Great Lakes, one in Orlando, and one in sunny California. And I chose California. So some people say they were born here. I say I chose California.
Yeah, me too.
So when I was in boot camp in San Diego, I fell in love with the sunsets, and that's how my love of California started. Mm-hmm. And I eventually moved here permanently in 1986. Lived in Placerville, Sacramento area for several years, and then relocated to the beautiful California Central Coast in 1990, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. So what brought you to Placerville? And I mean, that's kind of an odd place.
Well, I had a friend in the Navy, and he was from California.
Yeah.
And so I was lured out here, and I loved the
you had a
mountains.
Yeah, you had a connection, so you started. So how'd you get into the horticultural business? What's your love of plants come from?
Well, being in a garden, that's where I fit the best. That's where I enjoy being. It's where my thoughts are most harmonious, and I just love being in gardens, and that's where I am happiest.
Nice.
So,
ending up at Hearst Castle.
Yeah, and I was going to say, Hearst... Hearst Castle, I'll tell you, I must, true confession here, full disclosure, I've never been to this monument of California history. I know that it was built between the years of 1919 and 1947, and that, of course, I was a fan of the film Citizen Kane, Orson Welles' sort of satire on the life of William Randolph Hearst, the great accumulator, as he was called. And the only other thing I know is that what's said about Hearst Castle is it's what God would have built if he had the money. And that was Bernard Shaw. But tell us, how did you end up at Hearst Castle?
Well, when before moving to San Luis Obispo to attend school, I did visit Hearst Castle on a couple of tours and seeing the area, and really loved the place. And while attending the community college, Cuesta College in San Luis Obispo, and I was in the library one day, posted up on the side of one of the bookcases was a 8.5 by 11 sheet that said that the staff at Hearst Castle was seeking tour guides. So I contacted them, submitted an application, and my first year was as a trainee.
Okay.
And then I took an exam and then became a permanent guide in 1992.
Being a guide, that's a little like being in theater or something, isn't it?
It kind of is. When 53 people step off a bus and they're there to be entertained and informed by you for 75 minutes, it's like, wow.
After you've told everyone where the restrooms are, where they can get a drink of water.
Put the leashes on the children, and
please don't touch the ceramics, kids.
My goodness. So there you are doing these tours. Now, you must have become extremely familiar not just with the inside, but the outsides and the many gardens. And again, showing my ignorance of the place, all I know from photos is that it looks like there's about 50 palm trees around the thing and multiple other shrubs and garden spots, etc. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the site itself was really a campsite hilltop that the Hearst family used. And Mr. Hearst, William Randolph Hearst, visited the ranch with his parents, and they did some horseback riding, camping. And that particular hilltop, which now is formerly known as La Cuesta Encantada, is a position to have a direct view of the bay and the coastline and the amazing Santa Lucia mountain range.
And this is in San Simeon.
It's in San Simeon, right.
Yeah.
It's about 1,600 feet up. So when you ask about the gardens, you're really asking what's most important, and Hearst always felt as though the view's the thing. So
it was a Spanish land grant, wasn't it?
It had been eventually purchased by his father, George Hearst, who was a mining engineer and developer, gold, silver, and copper mining, George Hearst. So it was a land investment for George.
And did it also run all the way into Monterey County up to Sarah Peak?
Eventually, Hearst expanded the property to 250,000 acres.
Wow.
And developed a horseback riding destination at Jalón. So there's another sort of country home they used. And they could horseback ride through the mountains. They could go on camping trips and picnics and that sort of thing. So the gardens themselves are positioned to take advantage of the views, but also the lifestyle. The lifestyle was a country lifestyle. So tennis, horseback riding, swimming. You would go on camping trips. You would go on picnics and that sort of thing. So the landscape is as important as the hilltop itself.
And the plant community that we're talking about is oak woodland, it's Quercus agrifolia, and that sort of thing, or how does it vary? It's coastal hills?
Well, it's coastal, the San Simeon Point. I think there's quite a few non-natives that have been planted there, groves of eucalyptus are there now. But it's a ranch grassland, and then it's oak studded hillsides.
Now, I know that, he famously collected antiques and European treasures, and he had a little zoo there, so he collected animals. Did he also have any interest in ornamental plants or odd species or things like that?
Well, Hearst worked most closely with the architect Julia Morgan. And in the letters that exist between them, Hearst and Morgan refer to the plant names directly. So they were not just talking in general about plant forms. Julia Morgan and Hearst were talking deeply about plant names, about
specific species
that they wanted. One person observed that it was, when they were deep in conversation, it was as if a spark was moving from head to head as they were discussing design and architecture and gardens.
Simpatico in their thoughts then. Simpatico, yeah. So, well, now, if there were specific plants, and there's a record of that, do you recall some of those plants?
Wow. Some of the plants. Well, for example, I should say that Hearst was in his mid-50s when he started.
Yeah.
So he wanted mature specimens. So I guess one of the most defining plants other than the native oaks are the Italian cypress. And he brought in full-size, mature Italian cypress. And the design of the mansion and the gardens began more Spanish in style, and then as the years progressed, then there were very strong Italian elements. Broad terraces were added, and then the vertical element of the Italian cypress are really a defining feature of the gardens, along with the palms.
How much time did Hearst actually live there? I mean,
well, it varied. In the early years, it was only a few months a year, and then as he grew older and spent more of his time in California, he was from California but spent many years in New York, having a life as a newspaper publisher, and he was married and had children, and they lived in New York, visiting California. And then later in his 60s and 70s, he spent more of his year in California, and so San Simeon became more important.
And he collected all his lifetime, the stuff that's there?
He had what was called an acquisitive possessiveness.
Nice
so,
political, diplomatic way of putting it. Yeah.
I don't think it would be wrong to say that he eventually spent every penny that he owned and then borrowed huge amounts of money to run his businesses and to continue collecting.
And he essentially wanted to turn this into a great museum of a sort, did he not?
He did. As he grew older, he thought he would buy better things, and keep them. And to put it in context, keep in mind, Hearst had other homes of that size.
Oh, really? Of that size? Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you.
Where were these?
So his wife lived in a very large French chateau mansion in New York.
Oh, my.
There is a big Hearst family compound in Northern California called Windtun, which is a Bavarian style complex. He built a 110-room beach house for Marion Davies.
Just
in
a bungalow
Santa
there.
Monica. And then he had inherited 1 million acres from his father in Mexico.
No kidding.
And then he also purchased and developed a castle called St. Donat's in Wales.
My goodness.
Wow.
So collecting for all of these homes.
Where was all this property in Mexico?
Yeah.
In Chihuahua.
And was it an agave farm, or what was going on
I wish
there?
I knew more about that.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting.
That's very much worth researching. You'll have to Google
I
that.
think I shall.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and folks, if you have a question for Mr. Rick Becton, you can text us here at the studio at 831-900-900-5773. Send us a little text, leave us your first name so we know who you are, and we'll ask Rick that question. I do want to remind everyone this is KSQD Santa Cruz 90.7 FM and streaming at KSQD, ksqd.org. So, Rick, you have a lot of time spent at Hearst Castle. Is there something there, is there a part of it that you're more fond of than anything else, or is it just the experience in its totality?
Well, one of the elements that most guests only get sort of a passing view is of what's called the pergola, which is a kind of bridle way or riding path. It's about a mile long. It's a series of concrete columns with support beams, trusses over top, and then it was planted with fruit trees and espaliered trees all along.
Oh, wow.
Hearst insisted that it be tall enough so that a tall man on a tall horse wearing a tall hat should be able to ride comfortably through it. And it's about a mile long. It snakes along what is a sort of a western hillside that's attached to the castle. And then along the way there is a series of bear pits. And one of the things I did during a lull period was when I was driving home one day, I parked and got out and went through the polar bear pits, and the bear pits it's only really a concrete remnant today with bars, but it's a notable element if you're visiting with the Hearst family in the 1930s and you go horseback riding with Hearst and you're stopping on your horse and looking over at polar bears. In
My
California,
goodness.
that's a unique moment.
My goodness. Well, and as the story goes, William Randolph Hearst was also credited with or responsible for introducing certain species into California, one of which the red fox and the other being wild boars, I assume for hunting purposes. Is that correct? Is that a true story?
Well, I wish I could confirm that. I know that it was the largest private zoo in the world, and there are some remnant species still there. Zebras, oudads, Barbary sheep.
But he wasn't letting those run around on the property or into the hills, per se.
Well, they were in fenced enclosures.
Fenced enclosures.
Yeah,
okay.
so that they would be available for the guests to see and interact
Yeah.
and go feed a baby elephant. I mean, what's
Yeah.
more fun than that?
Yeah. Wow.
Well,
Should I make a list?
Yeah, really. Oh, my
No,
goodness.
what kinds of things did you learn about presentation from them? I mean, things that people might want to be able to do in their own homes and their own gardens.
Well, the most important thing is to develop a garden that pleases you. And Hearst and Morgan were working from a lot of books that were published about Spanish and Italian gardens, and Hearst, as a newspaper editor, would pick and choose things that he liked, and then he was not afraid to go back and edit them. The outdoor swimming pool, the Neptune pool, is an example of an element of the garden that was built 3 different times, and each time with a different sort of artistic intent. First as a pond, then enlarged as a swimming pool for his family, and then later this amazing colonnaded swimming pools, 345,000 gallons of water. That is a fantastic blue color, and it's worth visiting the castle just to see that. And then the tours end at this amazing indoor pool, which is covered in glass and gold tiles, which is just worth a visit.
Yeah. The maintenance of it's a state park, right? So the budget has to come from the state of California to maintain it.
Right. And there is a foundation that helps support art restoration work and other projects. There has been an ongoing garden restoration project. Yes, and there's a fairly strong... When I was working there in the 1990s, visitorship was very, very strong. Today, of course, with COVID had closed the castle for a long time, and they repaired the entrance road, and that took many, many months to do, and that has a financial impact. And so I'm pretty sure their intent is to rebuild their visitorship up to what it had been in the 90s.
Yeah. Were there items, architectural and art items that were in storage or still in storage now? And when it transferred to the state, did those items that were stored in a warehouse somehow be donated to the state, or are they now still in the Hearst family property?
Well, the Hearst Corporation, essentially, it was the inheritor of the property. So all the artwork had belonged to Hearst, but it was the corporation's responsibility to sort of decide what goes where into the future. And in the late 1930s and the 1940s, when Hearst had some severe financial problems, he was forced to sell about half of his collection, which was a massive sale. Some very fine things, and then just repeated numerous objects.
Stuff that he had multiple items.
Right. And then at the bottom of the hill, there were large warehouses that were built, and those were containing items that belonged to the Hearst Corporation, and so it was their responsibility. The castle was donated. The hilltop, which is about 123 acres on the hilltop, and about 30 acres at the visitor center, are state property. There's a right-of-way, a road that they maintain between the two, but the property itself is Hearst Corporation ranch land, so the state doesn't manage a massive amount of property. It's actually just limited to the hilltop and to the visitor center and San Simeon. There's a campground adjacent to the area, but
Interesting.
And most of the stuff in the castle now is on display. I mean, the artwork that's there is
almost everything. There are big storage lockers, and there are some things that are stored, but most things are on exhibit. There are approximately 25,000 objects that are part of the collection.
Yeah.
And it's 165 rooms within the complex.
Well, I am sure that you've had some pretty memorable experiences there, and we're going to talk about some of those after we come back from our break. And then I know that you've got some questions for us as well. So we're going to take a short musical break, and we will be right back. This is In the Garden. That's right. This is KSQD Santa Cruz, K-Squid 90.7 FM, and streaming live at ksqd.org. I'm Stephen E. Popp, and this is In the Garden, and we are here with our guest, Rick Becton, who has been telling us about his time spent in the state park system at Hearst Castle. And I imagine Hearst Castle, just the upkeep of the grounds must have required quite a few people. How large was the ground staff at the castle?
During Hearst time, it varied depending on what construction projects were going on, anywhere from 25 to 150.
25, and so is this kind of like Giverny, where Monet's gardens, when he was there, they were upkept by lots of employees, but afterwards fell into disrepair? Was there a period of time when things kind of went downhill? There
was. Hearst had built 5 greenhouses, of which 2 of them have been restored, so they did propagating on site. And Hearst really enjoyed just time in the gardens, walking in the gardens. The structure of the site is like a small Spanish hilltop town. So there's an esplanade that sort of meanders through. It's in places about 20 feet wide, and with all the different walks is about a quarter mile long. And it meanders through the garden. Everything is sort of connected together. The main building looking like a small church. The design is notably similar to the tower at Ronda, Spain. And then there are several different guest houses, 3 different guest houses that are Mediterranean in style, so partly Spanish, partly Italian. And then the larger picture, as Hearst wanted to expand that little village and have another guest house that was in a more Chinese style, another guest house that was more English style. And then he purchased and dismantled parts of 2 different monasteries in Spain and had the stones boxed and numbered and then shipped to the U.S. with the idea of using them as small ruins along the lower slopes.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's amazing. Now, the gardens themselves, were they thematic? Were they, old world Spain in the content of the plant life, or was it more indigenous plant life? What was planted in those gardens?
Well, in the Spanish style, it was, as was the sort of original intent, the design of southern Spain. You have rambling bougainvillea on the houses, and that gives a really soft effect to the appearance of the cast stone work. And the property really glitters with all of the glazed ceramic tile used on the steps, on the eaves of the houses, and then you have statuary in the gardens and all of that sort of organized around
the plants were intended to highlight these features.
Right. Camellias, there are some citrus trees, some unique ones like the kumquats are the ones I always enjoyed passing by and actually sampling if one had fallen.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Was it a state offense to pick one?
Yes, don't pick them. And one of the most notable Hearst stories is that Hearst was going to visit on one particular trip, and there had been a great storm, and the fruit had been blown off of most of the fruit trees. So the gardeners went about tying the fruit back onto the limbs of the trees so that Hearst could enjoy the scene as he visited at that time.
Oh, my. Oh, my. Excuse me.
Too much money.
That's
too much time.
Well, yeah, what God would have done if he'd had the money. Yes, indeed.
Oh, my gosh.
That's interesting, Rick. Any other outstanding, interesting moments? I mean, being a tour guide and dealing with the public can't be easy. Would not be my cup of tea. Challenging at times, perhaps, or
it was. I'm a frontline state parks person, so for 25 years I've been with the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a real philosophy for state park interpretation where a guide brings a bank of knowledge, and then it's really your job to draw out from the visitor their experiences and how they might relate to the property. And so that's what makes it more interesting as a guide, is to meet people from all over the world. And most challenging tour is always the tour where no one speaks English at all, but you still have to lead the tour, and you do a lot of pointing and a lot of gestures, and they understand not a lot.
Well, I'm sure doing a tour like that, you certainly had a script down pat, and you kind of knew, here's where the joke is coming. Let's see how many people laugh. And sometimes you get a wild audience, and sometimes that just falls flat and nobody responds.
Each tour group has a kind of personality. And, I mean, some things work. Some what we call guidisms work. And certain jokes work. But if you want to keep the tours conversational, if you can have a conversation between a tour guide and 53 people, if you can get really good at that, and I felt like I was pretty good at that, then it's a very rewarding experience if you can do that. Otherwise, you're just sort of performing in the sense of, having a memorized script. But state parks really focused on educating and inspiring the public, because the public owns the properties, right?
Sure.
The state parks doesn't own it. State parks maintains it.
What kind of questions were repeat questions? He said, "Oh, here it comes again."
Well, if you focus a lot on cultural history, as it is a museum, so people want to know about who lived here and all that. I mean, the real pivotal question is, why was Mr. Hearst living with a woman he wasn't married to? And all I can say is that Marion Davies, you could say she was really the jewel of the place. The place is the setting.
Yeah.
And she was lovely and funny and beautiful and dressed well, and was hilarious, the way sort of Lucille Ball was funny. And so she was really the jewel in the setting. And that's what people want to know, is how could Hearst remain married to a woman who, by the way, was also a showgirl? How could he remain married to her?
I see a theme happening here. Yes.
But so it was just every day those bus doors opened and people came out and they were fascinated. I was following a tour once as what they call a guard. On the biggest tours, you had actually two guides, one that was following, one that was leading. And I just remember this moment when a father put his son on his shoulders as we're walking up to the hello spot, and the little boy goes, "Castle, Daddy, castle." And that's sort of what you get when you go there. It doesn't look kind of like a castle. It is a castle.
It is a castle.
It's just immense and amazing place.
Wow.
So you shouldn't miss it if you haven't.
Well, I think you've just about convinced me to go take a tour one of these days. Now, San Simeon and that location, it's probably even more of a Mediterranean climate than we get to experience up here in Santa Cruz sometimes. Were there seasonal changes other than our typical, this is our wet season, this is our dry season? I mean, how was the plant life affected? Was there any seasonal change, or was it pretty much in bloom all the time and just a nice place to visit?
Well, one of the earliest responsibilities of Julia Morgan was to develop a water system. And so there is a continual source from the Santa Lucia Mountains that provide from 5 different wells water to a massive reservoir, and then that feeds the pools and the gardens. So once you have ample water, you can build almost anything and grow almost anything. I mean, in our dry season, some things can wither a bit, but massive oak trees, and Hearst was willing to dig up and move mature oak trees so that the placement was better. So instead of cutting them down and replanting,
to create
250-year-old oak trees were actually encased in concrete and big channels built, and then they were moved to new locations.
My goodness.
So the oaks were a major part of the framework of the garden.
And they're still there?
Well, oak trees die slowly. And so I think it was too much for them. So I think most of them are gone.
Yeah, that's a pretty big shock for a tree that large. I've seen oak trees, Quercus agrifolia, coast live oak, dug before and boxed, but not a 250-year-old tree that would last or survive that kind of treatment. I'm fascinated, though, that they lived as long as they did.
Right. It takes 100 years to die, but they're amazing. And then there are a couple of large magnolia trees on the main terrace, which provide shade, which is great. And then one of the greatest features, which I like, and I've actually tried to reproduce in my little garden, is climbing roses growing up Mexican fan palms. I just grew a little windmill palm, and I have what's called the butterfly rose that's growing up. But some of these 20-foot climbing roses can grow up the trunk and then out like a huge umbrella. When the Mexican fan palms were shorter, they would grow. The roses would grow up into the palm fronds, but of course now they're like 90 feet tall. Palm trees, Mexican fan palms. But having roses and palms paired together, I think is an amazing California sort of style.
Yeah, well, that's a nice segue. Tell us some more about your own gardens. You live in the Santa Cruz area,
right? In Aptos.
In Aptos, okay.
And it's a sunny part of Aptos, which is nice. And it's a suburban lot. It's about a third of an acre with a house and gardens. And I'm currently developing an elliptical garden on our slope, and I'm looking forward to having a place where I'm not sitting and looking at a garden as a picture, but sitting in the garden and being a part of it.
Yeah, nice.
And so that's
that brings to mind too one of my favorite perennial questions to ask guests, especially those who are gardeners and have a love of plants. Growing up in Georgia, what was your earliest memory of a garden of plants?
Well, we had dogwoods in our yard, and so dogwoods to me say the South.
What part of Georgia, up north or down south?
Oh, I grew up in Savannah.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. And so great oaks in the colonial part of the town. So if you're going to downtown, I grew up in suburbia. So pines everywhere. I think that's one reason why, or the reason why I really loved the sunsets in California, is that there was room and you could see the sunsets. In Georgia with the pines, it really obscures a lot of the views everywhere. So if you live in suburbia, you're really hemmed in a lot by these really, really tall pines.
And Savannah's almost on the coast, so it's kind of not. Yeah, if you're on the ground, you got trees above your head. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think Rick told us too earlier that his first enjoyment of California sunsets was while he was in San Diego in the Navy, and of course that's kind of like me saying, I saw Europe from the back of an armored vehicle when I was in the Army. But I mean that's an enticement, I think, here on the West Coast of the United States and California in particular, and we know that the coastal regions here, the Central Coast, we do get some beautiful sunsets, and when they are framed with the plant life that we have, it makes all the difference. I know you have a few questions for us, but before we get there, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything else you wanted to give us a note of worthy thought about Hearst Castle.
Well, there are a couple of plantings that are sort of unique. As you drive up and around to enter the hilltop, there are oleanders that are planted along the entrance road, and they're cut in a way where the basal sprouting is cut as if it were a pot.
Oh, wow.
And then the longer...
So they're topiaried.
Right, and then the longer limbs grow up and then out and flower. So you have like two sort of phases or two
tiers.
Two tiers.
Wow.
And then along the esplanade, there is a retaining wall, and a head gardener who started there as a worker, a man named Norman Rotanzi, was working when I started in 1991. So I got to meet him. And he had developed this way of cutting Lantana montevidensis in a kind of teardrop shape. And it was also topiaried also. And I think eventually, as a kind of honor, he was that version of Lantana. Lantana montevidensis rotanzi was named after him, and sort of honored his 50 years at Hearst Castle.
Wow. Wow. Head gardener, was he? Or?
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Rick Becton, what have you got for us?
My first question.
Ah.
Okay. I can be maybe too thrifty when it comes to spending money on compost and fertilizer.
Uh-huh.
I know they are important to a thriving garden. So what are the minimum amounts I can get away with adding each year to shrubs, trees, and bedding plants?
Well, if it's compost that is well composted, and you've got your formula correct with the carboniferous to the nitrogenous, and you've got a nice mix there, just putting on a thin mulch layer around your plants and shrubs is enough to encourage the nutrients and such to be brought into the soil. You don't have to put on more than a layer of an inch if you're using it for mulch. If you're turning it into a bed for vegetables or something like that, then you're dealing with a higher quantity. What the actual minimum or maximum is going to be is up to your level of thriftiness and how you decide you want to portion it out. And I have to kind of do a lottery at home with my compost too. I don't make that much, so it's kind of like, well, who needs it the most? Raise your hands, raise your brows. So yeah.
Well, and I buy a bag of fertilizer, and then I sort of wander around going, well, you look kind of weak. I'll give you a handful. Yeah. And you look kind of weak, and is there a better way to do it?
Some more.
Well, I always believe that a little bit is better than a whole lot at once. A little bit
absolutely.
Every time. A couple of, you walk around with a bag of 16 or something, and you grab a fistful of it, a couple of sprinkles there, a couple there, and always make sure that the plant is hydrated before you do it, and then add a little bit more. I also have now found a source of coffee grinds, and I just spread them on top of the garden, and I have snail problems, and the snails don't like caffeine. Just think about a snail. It's moving along slowly. Give it a little caffeine, and it kind of exhausts itself and dies of a heart attack. But I find that the grinds are so perfectly made as a cover.
I think you're just making your snails move faster.
Well, I
caffeinated snails.
I've noticed less chewing.
Okay.
So
I don't think they like to cross the grinds either. I think it's
I think
upsetting to them, but
slimes, the slime that they give off doesn't scoot enough. But
all right, so I'm not good with fussy tropical plants, but I like them anyway, especially when I see them in a botanical garden. I can't seem to find a place for them where they are happy with the right proportion of sun and shade, fertilization and watering to make them happy. Is there a list of more hardy tropicals I could try?
The one that jumps to my mind right away is canna. And canna is pretty tough as nails. It can take dry or wet. I grow it directly in water. Sometimes I've got a couple different colors of flowers and leaf color, and it does have large leaves with nice effect, and they are pretty easy to grow in any light condition. Another one that comes to my mind are the strelitzias, the bird of paradise. If you've got room, you can do the big giant bird of paradise, which usually is confused for a banana, or you can do the smaller, I believe it's the Strelitzia regina, and that's your typical bird of paradise, very drought tolerant, multiple conditions, shade, sun, etc. How about you, Joe? What do you
Some
think,
of the
Joe?
gingers work very well, too.
Hedychiums,
Yeah, and there's that one that has the bizarre flower kind of thing on it that has kind of taken over Hawaii as an invasive plant.
Yeah, it's one of the
But,
Hidicium genus.
I forget
Yeah,
which
yeah.
one it is,
Yeah,
but if you're looking for a leaf effect that's tropical, that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a great canna that I dug out of an old garden in Salinas called Cleopatra. Look her up, because she is the most bizarre thing you've ever seen. Sometimes the leaves are bright green. Sometimes they're bronze. Sometimes they're streaked with bronze. The flowers are either orange or they're sort of tomato red, or they're a little bit of both, or they're speckled.
Yeah.
But she gets to be about 5-6 feet tall. So, and she dies back. So you can, cut her down to the ground in January, and you got a brand new, healthy-looking tropical plant.
Well, we're just about out of time here. I want to thank our guest, Rick Becton, for coming in and sharing his knowledge of Hearst Castle and plants, etc., with us. And I think that since Rick has also worked in several other park settings, we may have to have him back again as a guest. So thank you so much, Rick, for being on the show. And
Well, you're welcome.
Joe, another
You
wonderful...
did a great job, Rick.
Another
All right.
great
He was
show
nervous,
here.
but we
Good to
got
be here.
him warmed up.
We did, and we are so happy to have spent our time with you and that you have spent your time with us this morning. This is In the Garden. I'm Stephen E. Popp. Until next week, well, happy gardening.
Absolutely. Get out there and do something.